Welcome back. Today, I want to talk about Medicare for All. Specifically, the truth about Medicare for All, how it applies to Title X funding that just happened, abortion in general, and the Hyde Amendment. So before we get into Medicare for All, what I want to do is go over what happened recently with Title X funding because, well, it's been everywhere, so I think it's important to know what exactly is happening. So over the past week, Planned Parenthood decided to withdraw from Title X, meaning they no longer receive Title X funding from the government. So the reason for this is because the Trump administration implemented new rules prohibiting Title X grantees from providing or referring patients for abortion. So Planned Parenthood, which obviously does both of those things, they could no longer continue to provide abortions and still be part of Title X and receive funding. So they decided to withdraw rather than stop doing abortions. And as a consequence, they are losing about $60 million every year from the federal government. So there are many individuals on the pro-life side who see this as a win, because it's part of Trump's campaign pledge to defund Planned Parenthood, which is a pretty common phrase we hear on the right, defund Planned Parenthood. However, I'm going to go through and explain why, even if you think this is a good thing, it may be short-lived depending on what happens in the 2020 election. Now, before we look at how Medicare for All specifically will change this, let's look at the Hyde Amendment first. So I previously did a video about the Hyde Amendment. It'll be linked up there if you want to see it. And I won't go in as much depth here as I did there, but to basically explain, the Hyde Amendment basically says that the federal government cannot fund abortions except for in a few extreme cases. So you cannot use federal funding you receive by the government to pay for abortions. However, the vast majority of Democrats in the 2020 race actually now want to repeal the Hyde Amendment. They want to get rid of that so taxpayer money could in fact go towards abortions. So out of the 22 Democratic candidates, 20 of them want to repeal Hyde. So 20 Democratic candidates want to make it so that your taxpayer money can go towards funding abortions. The only two who have not explicitly come out and said they want to repeal Hyde are Tom Steyer and Joe Sestak, who are probably two people that I imagine you hadn't really heard about at all or much about. And obviously, this doesn't mean they want to keep the Hyde Amendment. It just means they haven't come out and said that they want to repeal it yet. And seeing as how they are both fairly pro-choice and the rest of the Democratic nominees want to repeal it, I imagine that these two will align with the other 20. So again, out of the 22 Democratic candidates for president, 20 of them have come out and said that they want to repeal the Hyde Amendment and will work towards that as a president. Now, there is some confusion about Biden, so I want to clarify this just in case you don't know. Biden does in fact want to repeal the Hyde Amendment. So the reason there's confusion is because originally, earlier this year, he came out and said that he supported the Hyde Amendment. But after some backlash and just a bunch of other stuff, he then changed his opinion, and now he wants to get rid of the Hyde Amendment completely. Before we move on to Medicare for All, if you appreciate getting facts and sources like this and you appreciate being informed on topics such as this, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you get all the videos that I provide and you don't miss out on anything. And as always, my sources are down below if you want to check them out. So for Medicare for All, Bernie is obviously the, main supporter, the reason it's a talking point right now. And his Medicare for All bill specifically says that he wants to give free comprehensive reproductive, maternity, and newborn care. Now, it doesn't specifically say abortion in there, but his team and Sanders himself have confirmed that it would cover abortions. Now, in case you don't want to take Mother Jones's word for it, which I suggest you never do because don't trust Mother Jones, from Political, we have the same thing. It doesn't say that it's covered, but it is in fact covered. We also have from Iowa Starting Line. When Bernie was in Iowa, he talked to a NARAL group and he said that health insurance, including abortion coverage, will be guaranteed to all Americans through a Medicare for All single-payer system. And that's through the Iowa Starting Line. So real quick, I want to take a note. This Iowa Starting Line logo is actually pretty cool. Most of the time when you look at newspapers, they literally just has their name, and that's kind of lame. Good for you, Iowa Starting Line. Now, so you can see that this is in fact a thing. But the media generally hasn't really been covering this. And what I want to show is how Newsweek decided to cover this. Rather than cover the news as it actually was, that it would cover abortions, what they said is that Republicans look to capitalize on abortions being funded under Medicare for All. So this was not an opinion piece that I could see. It was actually a news article, and it's not them talking about the news, it's them talking about Republicans looking to jump on that part of the news and use it to their advantage, that's ridiculous. What kind of headline is that? So just to re-emphasize here, Bernie's Medicare for All plan says that it will include abortion. And since it's a single payer system, which means the government pays for everyone's health care and everyone is on that health care, that means that every single abortion in the United States under Medicare for All would in fact be paid for by the government, or more accurately, by us. So that means that every abortion, we would pay for ourselves as taxpayers. And this is Bernie's Medicare for All bill. Now, I don't think it's a stretch to assume that the other Medicare for All bills would also include abortion, because if not, why would they support repealing the Hyde Amendment? It would make no sense to repeal Hyde and then not include abortion under their insurance. So again, I think it's a safe assumption that all of the Medicare for All bills would also include abortion coverage, just like Bernie Sanders does. So one last time, every abortion in the United States under these Medicare for All bills would be paid for by the taxpayers. So now, just for fun, because this video hasn't been quite fun enough, let's see how much that will cost us as taxpayers, because there's nothing more fun than losing your money to the government. So first, we have to look at how many abortions there actually are every year. And I often see two different numbers. The CDC gives about 600,000 and the Guttmacher Institute about 900,000. So if you're using the CDC statistics of 600,000, stop. That is not an accurate statistic. So if you look at their report, it says that they include reporting from 49 different areas, but in those 49 areas, they include New York City and District of Columbia, but they exclude California, Maryland, and New Hampshire. So just to get this straight, the CDC does not include abortion statistics from the most populous and probably the most liberal state in the United States. Looking at that, it's obvious the 600,000 number is going to be too low because you're not even including California. You cannot use that statistic. So if you're pro-life or even pro-choice, don't use that number. It is not accurate. Instead, we're going to use the Guttmacher Institute, which is a left-leaning institute, so they're not inflating these numbers by any means, and they find that there are about 926,000 abortions in 2014, which is the most recent year that I could find for some reason. So back to the real question, how much will this cost us taxpayers? Well, there are about 930,000 abortions every year. The average cost of an abortion, we're going to say, is $400, which is actually lowballing it because you can look at the source I have down below, but we'll go with $400. And that equates to about $370 million every single year. We, as taxpayers, will be required to pay $370 million every single year so that women can get abortions. And I haven't even talked about the lack of limits on abortions here, about time limits. This is just about the abortions that are currently happening now. If they then continue to happen at this rate under Medicare for All, we're going to have to pay $370 million for that. So in case you couldn't tell, this is something I'm really passionate about. It's one thing to be pro-choice, it's another thing to then require that those who are pro-life and vehemently disagree with abortions pay for your abortion. I cannot fathom why this is so popular right now in the Democratic Party. Now, I'm not trying to tell you who to vote for and who not to vote for. If you're pro-choice, this might not bother you whatsoever, and in that case, this hasn't changed your opinion. But if you are pro-life and somehow a Democrat, which is becoming increasingly difficult these days, then please take this into account. But it's important to know how these policies will affect abortion, not just healthcare generally. And to me, this is unacceptable. I do not want other people, myself included, to be forced to pay for someone's abortion. I don't support abortion in general, and much less if I'm the one paying for it. So what do you think about this? If you're pro-choice, do you support this? Do you think this is acceptable? And if you're pro-life, is this maybe going to change the way that you're looking at who to vote for in 2020? Let me know down in the description below. As always, before you leave, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. And if you think that someone could benefit from learning this, go ahead and share it with them. Let them know that Medicare for All sure has its good parts, but abortion specifically is one of them that it has a very big impact on that we're not talking about. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.